are you, sir?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm hungry, mate. Looking at your backdrop. Something about the word full English just makes you want to go out and have a big breakfast.
Well, that's it, yeah. A lot of people make reference to that. But the full English has got a few connotations to it. The full English really is just about being an Englishman rather than the actual breakfast, but everything sort of zones back into it anyway.
Yeah, so Graham, just from the off, let me just say a big thank you to, it was one of our viewers. I'm really apologise. I can't find your name because I can't get into Facebook at the minute. There's some technical glitch. But somebody very kindly messaged me and said, Chris, you should chat to Graham Moore, aka Daddy Dragon, to which I replied, brilliant. Yeah, good. I watched some of your stuff, Graham, and there doesn't seem to be a more important time in history, or at least my 50 years of history, to be having an open conversation about what the hell is going on with our freedom. We seem to have just handed it away and people aren't saying anything. So over to you.
Well, I agree. So the first thing to say to you is there's two elements to what I do. First of all, I do the full English show, and where Daddy Dragon come from was I created a group of people to do with the Constitution. The common law constitution is what is its technical name. And it's about English law going back literally 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 years. It's not just when we became a country, in other words, one nation under God. We were separate feudal areas of England, still of England, but one person and one king pulled us all together as a Christian nation. Prior to that, these different feudal areas, you can call them tribal areas, whatever, they had their own laws. And all of that is where our ancient laws and customs come from. So just to make sure people are aware, the dragon is the original flag of England, not the St. George's Cross. So there are two, and there is a standard which they used to take into battle, which was the dragon. Up until fairly recently, there was a Kent regiment in the army, literally, that had a cap badge, which was the dragon. It was funny enough, it was disbanded in 1964, I believe. Again, very old regiment going back hundreds of years. And then there's the second element to what I do, apart from the channel, is that although I'm not a spokesman for the English Democrats Party, what that is the political party I belong to, or I'm a member of, I should say, and they have been around for 18 years. They did have a very large membership going back to the original stages. UKIP then took over in a lot of ways, and especially with Nigel Farage, but they're British, not English. And then it went on from there, basically. I was a member of UKIP and the English Democrats, and just to express to everyone that the English Democrats was one of very few political parties where UKIP allowed you to be a member of the English Democrats as well as a UKIP member. So, for example, in UKIP, you couldn't technically be a member if you was a member of the National Front or the British National Party, Britain First. There's a number of these different groups where they regarded them as not what they was about. So they sort of barred membership to people of that fraternity. The English Democrats were not one of those. So that's the first thing to say to people. So getting back into the detail, it's about freedom and liberties. It's often said that we have no constitution. That isn't true. The United Kingdom doesn't have a constitution. England has a constitution, and a very good one. And our constitution and our statutes that become part of that constitution, and the oath system is what created the United States of America's constitution. We have certain unalienable rights, and again, the State Department, Mike Pompeo, and the Unalienable Rights Commission in America have just published one of my letters on their website to do with England and Britain, etc., and explaining the plight of the English. So for me, it is about freedom, and it is our culture and our way of life. It isn't about being black, brown, yellow, white. For me, although the indigenous population of these islands is very important, obviously, but you would be wrapped in the English flag, whether you are black, brown, yellow. It's about our culture and believing in our constitution and our unalienable rights, which were given to us by God, basically. And a lot of people don't know that we still have the right to keep and bear arms. That is written in the Bill of Rights. It pre-existed the Bill of Rights. I've got a number of little videos of people in America talking about it, and certainly some senior Supreme Court judges explaining where the right come from. But that's just one of the things. There's many other things that come from that Bill of Rights. So we have a Bill of Rights. We have a constitution. It's called a common law constitution. There are certain things that are set in stone and certain statutes with phrases which mean that they can never be repealed. That's the important thing to understand. And they can never be, so our rights from the Bill of Rights of 1688, for example, are, let me just put it this way, it's, when you actually look at the Bill of Rights and you read through it and you understand it, you understand what English culture is all about. And once you do that and you understand our culture, you understand what it is that we're fighting for and to get back, and we will get that back.
Yeah, I'm guessing if we were more aware of this constitution, it would sort of cement our identity a lot more, wouldn't it, as a country? At the minute, everything is just wishy-washy. There's so much left and right, and I won't even pretend I understand all the left-wing and right-wing kind of stuff, but we seem to be subject to just a wishy-washiness and a lack of identity of who we are as a country. And that's opening the door for let's just call them policies, which are bloody laughable. If they weren't so serious, they'd be laughable, wouldn't they?
Well, I agree. And there's a lot of, shall we say, nonsense going on at the moment. We won't sort of expand upon that, but I can tell you that the English Democrat Party and Robin Tilbrook, who's the leader, by the way, he is ex-military and his father was a brigadier general. So he understands the military covenant. He also understands the English very much so, and he is very much an Englishman, and he doesn't believe in the United Kingdom or that parliament. But getting back to what you've just said about being wishy-washy and left and right. So as a constitutionalist, the rule of law, the Constitution, comes over everything. It basically is the core element that you believe in. I am not a left and right person. I don't believe, and I think it's destructive to the country to have two diametrically opposed political parties that pull the country from left to right. There is no stability with that. You don't want to be in the middle. What you need is a constitution, which we have. That is why the United States of America is such a great country, because it is their military swear an oath not to a queen and not to, technically not to a country. They swear the oath to the Constitution. So their oath is literally, we will defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Well, that is what we should be doing. So to get back to the point of these willy-washy policies, etc., and you've hit another key point, I've got to be honest with you, which is the identity. The attack on the English identity has been at least there for 150 years. It's certainly got worse in the last 50. The European Union is often referred to as a Nazi organisation. It isn't. It's actually a communist organisation. And when you look into the actual detail and how it was made, founded, where it originated from, Karl Marx actually said, and bearing in mind he's buried in North London, Karl Marx actually said that every communist revolution in Europe has been shipwrecked on the Rock of England. Now, he didn't say the Rock of Britain. He said the Rock of England. And the reason for that is we have a common law jurisdiction and a common law constitution that protects your individual rights against the state. That is so crucial for people to understand. Whereas Marxists, communists, Nazis, socialists, etc., whether they be democratic socialists, which is just another way of saying two wolves and a sheep are going to decide by vote what they're going to have for dinner. And you've got to understand that the Constitution is what protects you as an individual against the state. And your identity is protected by the Constitution as an individual. And then you become this successful nation because you have the freedom of thought, the freedom of expression, the freedom of speech. And what that gives you is the power to invent. And then when you look at the English inventions over the years from, let's go all the way back, and I'll refer to Britain for this as well, because the Scots have a completely different legal system to the English. That's a key factor in this, which is why I always say to people, the United Kingdom is not a country. You can't have a country with two separate legal systems. It is a union, no different to the European Union, the Yugoslav Union of old, and the USSR. They were unions. They were not countries as such. So getting back to the identity, if you look at everything that we've produced as a nation, most recently, I'll give you the best one, which is the World Wide Web. It's English. And it was given to the world by the English. Locomotives, trains. If you go all over the world, there's an actual British standard for the rail tracks. Again, go out to India and you'll see the trains that we built 100, 150 years ago still operating. Telephones, television, again, trains, the jet engine, everything, because it comes from the power of the mind and people individually being able to express their thoughts and their opinions, and that is what gives you the human energy to invent things. And what you'll notice about totalitarian regimes, China, for example, the USSR is another one, they have to steal our intellectual property rights because they don't have that creation within their own nations because they oppress and suppress it. So again, it's something that the identity of an Englishman of being free is core. And I mean, if I go back to one of our constitutional statutes, which is the Act of Settlement of 1701, it actually states there that the laws of England are the birthright of an Englishman. You couldn't get any clearer.
Graham, let's come on to the holy grail of conversations at the moment, which is let's just call it Q. Let's not use the whole word, because
okay.
It's starting to trigger people's radars now. Let's just say that.
Yeah. No, I understand that.
So the Q movement, what is your take on it, and how did you come across it?
Right. So the first thing to say to you is I'm not a Q follower as such, and I don't believe that that's the right terminology. That is what the mainstream media want to present. That's not what it is. I first come across it in October 2017 when it first started, or just before. When I say just before, because there was messages coming up on another board that was, allegedly something to do with military intelligence that was coming up. So I started to look at it and see what was coming out. Then obviously a lot of it was very cryptic. There's something specific that they say, which is future proves past, which was a very interesting element for me, because it meant that what they were saying now, sometime in the future is going to come true, and it will prove that we are who we say we are. So the next thing to say to you is who is Q? I don't know, is the answer. It's highly likely military intelligence in the US. Q plus could be President Trump. There is a team that's referred to as Q with the highest classification in the United States of America. There are other elements to lean towards Virginia, which is where the main military intelligence areas are. The first thing that people have to understand about the military in America, and I touched on it earlier, is that they swear an oath to protect the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That means if they can see a plot in military intelligence terms against the United States Constitution and against the people of the US and the President of the US, then they will formulate a strategy to remove that threat. Yeah. And part of removing that threat, as I see it, is to awaken the people to the threat. The people need to be aware. The objective of the military, and especially on American soil, would be not to have any violence. Now, Q has never, ever associated himself with violence or their cells, because I believe it's a team. It isn't one person, and that team could be anyone. I don't know who it is. No one knows who it is. So the next thing is, what is Q? What is it that they tell you? Well, the way I describe it to people is when the mainstream media says, look here, look at this, and they come through and their 4 a.m. speaking points are, and we've all seen, or should have seen the video now with all these different people from all around the world, all saying exactly the same thing, exact words, but all different news stations and different presenters, right? That video is out there. It's a very powerful video, a little clip. What Q says is, so the mainstream media is saying, look here. And Q says, no, look here. So for me, it's about information and about steering people to look at both sides, not just to focus on what the mainstream media are telling you when it is obvious a propaganda machine. So there's lots of what's known as Q proofs, which in effect of things that have come true, or something that has been said by Q, and then a few minutes later, President Trump has said the same words in his tweets. Yeah, so there's a correlation between the two. It's gone on for a long time. There is something else called a Q clock. I've covered Q for a long time. Like I say, from the beginning, I don't see any negativity. What I do see, funny enough, is the mainstream media attacking the Q movement. And that can only be because the movement is working. In other words, people are now seeing the lies that they're being told. They are now seeing the propaganda. And it's a bit like I said earlier, the emperor has no clothes. I mean, I look at the Q, this group of people, as those people, standing up and saying the emperor has no clothes. And then all of a sudden everyone says, the emperor has no clothes. The emperor has no clothes. That is the creation. And it is undoing the propaganda of the mainstream media and these controlling people. That's my opinion of it. Q can put out disinformation because we know that the enemy looks just as well as we do. Obviously, you would put some things that are not quite true. Sometimes there's other bits in there that make fun of the elites. But at the end of the day, my opinion is, it is, in my opinion, military intelligence, yeah. And I do believe it's the United States. I believe they're the white hats, not the black hats. In other words, the good people, not the bad people. From everything I've read, they have never been negative. They have never, ever expressed, in fact, they've done the opposite, and they do not want people to be violent. They are going to take care of it. Law enforcement's going to take care of it. President Trump's going to take care of it. And the corruption and the evil is going to be rooted out. That's it.
Gosh. It stands to reason, Graham, that, we're stand-up guys, right? We're obviously putting ourselves out there to speak for what we believe in. Not what we believe in, what is right for our bloody children and the next generation, warriors, as I said earlier. So it stands to reason that there'll be people high up in US government that feel like us. They don't want this shit, They don't want to be slaves. They don't want to be screwed over by this satanic agenda, whether it's the Khazarian mafia or whoever it is. They don't want to put up with another, like the events in New York, all this kind of stuff. So I just think it's entirely possible, isn't it, that there's a stand-up guy or group of individuals have gone, come on, let's act,
Yeah, I do. But you've got to have someone who is an absolute patriot, that is a constitutionalist, which President Trump is. I believe this plan was to put Trump in place for this a long time ago. I believe this has gone on for some time. The planning of it is the most extraordinary military planning in detail that I've never ever seen anything else like it, to be honest with you. I find it fascinating. Some things I have dismissed, some things I don't dismiss. But again, it is for us to make the decision on it. But one of the things that I'll emphasise, and I emphasise this strongly, anyone that the media doesn't like, hates with a passion, you can more or less draw the conclusion that they're the good guys. So I draw the conclusion that President Trump is the good guy. One of the reasons I like what he does is because he has allowed people to lay hands on him from a Christian perspective and pray, and he joins them in prayer in the White House. They pray before every cabinet meeting. Now, whether you're religious or not is irrelevant. The point is that he believes in good and evil, and he believes that he is getting assistance from God to root out the evil. That is a positive for me. That is the power of prayer is very positive to me. That's the first thing from a sort of spiritual element. The next element of that is, when we talk about the storm is upon us. We're waiting at the moment for President Trump to actually send out the tweet that states that, because that will be the beginning of the end for the cabal when that reference is made in his tweets. But like I say, even Air Force One changed its call sign, its electronic call sign to Q and Q plus, funny enough, which was one of the Q proofs. Again, the media have told many lies. There's a lot of idiots that also follow and have said, that JFK Jr. is alive. Q has never said that. In fact, he was asked a question, or they was asked a question on a question and answer session, is JFK Jr. alive? And he come back and said no.
Well, no, he ain't alive for the simple reason Poppy bloody Bush put an end to him. I mean, come on. Well, how can anyone know for definite? But if your plane goes down was it his whole family on board or something? It's just hideous, And you look at old the Bush crime family. He did not like him bringing that magazine out, Graham. George was the name of the magazine. He did not like that.
Yeah.
And
there's a lot of things that I think will eventually come out. I think, there's an old saying, it'll all come out in the wash. I do believe that we are going to be told things. I do believe that 9/11, that JFK, the Kennedy assassination, is also going to be, we'll know the truth on that eventually. We're going to know the truth on 9/11, even 7/7. I think it's all going to come out. And what Q says is that they won't be able to walk the streets, because once we know, we know. The most important thing for us as patriots is that we need to make sure we look after each other, that we can explain in a rational way to others, chill. When things you start seeing all these really mad stuff happening out there, you need a group of people that know what's going on to say, listen, don't worry, yeah? Take the panic out of it. Don't react violently, yeah? There are people now that are pushing forward at doing the right thing and taking control back. That's it. And that is what Q and the Q team are creating in America. My personal view is there was a plan to put the United States of America into a full civil war by the second term of a Clinton administration. And then America would have been in a full-scale socialist revolution, which was a very dangerous situation. Getting back to a couple of points there, and I don't want to, if you've got any questions on various elements, but I just want to explain to people, Hong Kong, I'm just going to give you an example, and then I'll go on to the military covenant, if you don't mind, because I'm passionate about the military, and I'll show you, if you don't mind, I'll do a quick share and show you one of the reasons why. But Hong Kong, we have a perfect opportunity at the moment. What people don't realise is that Hong Kong became one of the freest nations in the eastern areas of this world. And the reason it did is because of a Scotsman, not an Englishman. The main reason was this Scotsman, and his name was Sir John James Catherway. And he believed in something called positive non-interventionism. In other words, let the markets, let the people, trust the people. They will do the right thing. So what you have to understand from that, the Hong Kong tax system was actually English, and yet it's known as the best tax system in the world. Guess what, people? It's voluntary. Guess what, people? Hong Kong had a surplus every year. They never run on a deficit. They surpassed England for a small nation that had really just started. They surpassed England because they was left alone to get on with it as free people. They surpassed England in the 1960s through GDP per capita. In other words, they was actually producing more income for their country than what we were, right? So if you speak to anyone who understands, and especially people in Hong Kong, they will also always say it was England that gave us this. So why is England no longer free? Well, the answer is the British. They and the British, and I'm not talking about, when I refer to the British, I am not talking or attacking the Scots, the English, the Welsh or the Irish. I am talking about the source of the power, and that is the Acts of Union of 1706, 1707, which is already been dishonoured by the very parliament it created when they gave Scotland back their parliament, because that was forbidden. And it was a grave injustice to the English. We are the only nation, sovereign nation in Europe without its own parliament. And I find that disgraceful. The British really started to attack the English, bearing in mind many of the people that went to America were English, Scottish, Welsh, Irish, and some other European nationalities. But what the War of Independence in 1776 was about was that those people that left these shores to America on the Mayflower in 1620, the really bad winter, and survived it with the help, which is where you get Thanksgiving, with the help of the Indians. And that was in 1620. In 1706, in 1688, we had a glorious revolution, which again is part of our constitution, and created the constitution of the day via people called, what we now call Whigs. They were the real constitutionists, the real conservatives. The point I'm making is in 1706, 1707, that created the British Parliament, right? Or the United Kingdom Parliament of Great Britain. And the Scottish Parliament and the English Parliament was brought together as one. So the Union is in effect only Scotland and England. Some years later, 1776, it only took them 70 years, they attacked those very migrants from these lands in America. And the reason they did was because then people asked for the same rights as an Englishman, right? That's really important for people to understand. They said, we want the same rights as an Englishman. And the British said no. And that's what the fight was about. And when they said, we're taking your guns, and they lifted their hand and said, come and take them, that was when the fight, that's when you heard the shot around the world. And it is crucial for people to understand, and many people are waking up to this, it was the British that did that. Less than 50 years after, so they attacked America again in 1812, but less than 50 years later, the British realised that they was going to lose control, the elites were going to lose control unless they destroyed England and attacked the Constitution, because the Constitution was what give these people this inner core of strength to fight for their freedom. So they sought to destroy England, and ever since that is what they've been doing. From giving away England to the European Union, there are so many things that are wrong with what happened, and England needs to regain her identity by acknowledging the common law constitution that protects the individual rights. Anyone who's got children should understand that our ancestors, and I'm just going to show you a picture here, and I could actually show you something else. That's not sure if you can see that up on the screen. Yeah. But there's a picture of my uncle. Again, he was a mariner. He was in the Navy during the Second World War. He was a submariner. So he's in the submarines. And anyone who tell you he's been in a sub, that was a dangerous old game then. And he was a young man. He joined in 17. At 17, he died at 91. And his last dying wish to us, when he was dying in hospital, is post my vote to leave the European Union. Please post my... To his dying breath, he was protecting us as English. He loved England. And part of what I say to people is that our soldiers, our ancestors who fought and died for our freedoms, handed them to us, not to disperse and frivel away, but to hold that mantle of light and pass that flame of freedom on to our next generations, so they and their grandchildren, as the English men and women of this land, could be free in spirit as well as not in irons. And that was the whole point of keep pushing forward and keep pushing forward. So when I see what the government are doing with reference to veterans in Northern Ireland and prosecuting veterans, letting out all the IRA, and the IRA are basically criminals. They are basically communists. If you read the IRA Green Book, it actually states that. So they let them go and they prosecute what we describe as the British veterans or the British Army, which is an absolute disgrace. The way they have treated, I've also myself suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder. I understand that. I understand how it feels, and it is an absolute a terrible condition that I would not wish on anyone, and it creeps up on you. It's not something that just appears. By the way, I have recovered, but I've recovered with psychology, not with drugs. So the next element to that is for people to understand that there is a covenant, and that is a military covenant between us. Now, soldiers, Navy, etc., they take an oath to protect the Queen and country. But you must also remember that Her Majesty took an oath to us, the people, in June of 1953 when she was crowned. She was also elected, and that's the bit people go, no, she wasn't. So we'll go and watch it. Watch the coronation and you'll see that she was elected, because before she was given the crown as a princess in the Abbey, she turned to the east, to the west, to the north and the south. And the Archbishop said, do you accept Princess Elizabeth as your queen? And those people in that Abbey could have said no. That's why I say she was elected. They said yes, and the procedure continued. Now, what you need to understand about that procedure was that the Queen took an oath, and part of that oath was from 1688, and it's called the Coronation Oath Act, where Her Majesty swore an oath to protect our ancient laws and customs and statutes. That means the Magna Carta is protected, which isn't a law. It's a treaty between the people and the Crown. The Glorious Revolution had 3 stages. The first stage was the Convention. The second stage was the Declaration of Rights, which is a contract, which was read to William and Mary. And the third stage is the Bill of Rights, the only statute that has got the name Bill. And the point of this was there was another document that was made, which was the Crown and Parliaments Act of 1688, which then allowed for the conversion of the Declaration, which is still a contract in law, into a statute. So all of these things, and again, Her Majesty in 1988 made a declaration in both houses and said that the Bill of Rights is in full force. Betty Boothroyd in 1993, as the Speaker of the Commons, reminded the courts that the Bill of Rights is in full force. So you need to understand that we have a written constitution as well as a common law constitution, which is judges should be looking at our constitution, and the point of it being there is the legislators are not allowed to create laws that interfere with our individual rights, our inalienable rights, yet they are. And they have done everything possible, and especially the British and the British media, to remove all knowledge of our constitution. They stopped. So, for example, we unlawfully went into the European Union. The European Communities Act of 1972 is actually unlawful under our constitution. It was an afterthought to have a referendum, and they had to win it, which is why Ted Heath and others lied. And the point being of what I'm actually saying to you is, what did they do in the early 1970s? Well, I'll tell you what they did. They removed constitutional law and civics from the curriculum in schools. They removed constitutional law from the bar exams. Why did they do that? Because they didn't want you to know you have a constitution that protects you and your children, that protects you and your rights and future generations. The whole point of this, it has been orchestrated by socialists, communists, Nazis, whatever you want to refer to them as, but they are a group of people that believe that the state has power over you, not you have power over the state. Well, I know which side I'm on, and I will protect my grandchildren's rights going forward, and that is what I do.
And you seem to be doing it very well, Graham, if I may say so. I think for a lot of people listening, this will be the first time they've been made aware of the Constitution. It certainly is for me. What do we think then out of order, out of chaos? Because it seems that in England today, indeed the world, identity is targeted to destroy that identity, to set people up to hate their neighbor, whether they be black, white, whatever, gay, straight, you know, all these petty, silly arguments that are dividing us from being a community. You know, I've traveled 80 countries, 7 continents. People will be sick of me saying this. I've seen difference, and I'm sure we will talk about that, particularly, or in Pakistan, I saw some real differences. But it seems that everything's being done to destroy our identity. And the reason I bring up order out of chaos, which is, it's kind of like an Illuminati, Freemasonic moniker or statement. It really does seem that everyone's running around shouting at that one, arguing with that. No, you can't put that on Twitter. It's just this horrible, nasty, spiteful, bringing out the worst of our human character. And what I call the sociopaths, although everyone will have their own take. You know, I got told off yesterday, for example, using the term sociopaths. Chris, they're not sociopaths, they're Satanists, right? And yeah, I'm not disagreeing. You know, if we want to use the metaphor good and evil, yeah.
No, I do believe in good and evil. I mean, and again, I don't want people. I am very spiritual, and there's but I don't read the Bible every day, etc. I believe in God. I believe in Christ, but I am not, if you like, an evangelistic Christian. Yeah. But when I was younger, I died. I was in a coma and I died, and I went to the other side, and I saw my mum, and I saw who I believed to be God, and I come back, and it had a very deep and profound effect on me, where I 100% believe in the afterlife and where you are. They actually said that I was brain dead, They asked my dad for my organs and my wife. So, I mean, what I'm expressing to you is that there is good and evil. There is the power of prayer works, and I've often told the full story on my channel of the fact that people were praying for me all over the world, and God listened. And then he told me to go back through another door, not the original door that he told me to go through. So there's lots of things that you experience over your life that make you as a person. And I always say to people, it's not how you start out, it's where you finish that makes it. And you need the positive of prayer. You need the positive mind, and human beings can overcome anything. But getting back to your point of chaos and order out of chaos, that is directly out of the playbook of Trotsky, Lenin, and the communists. That is exactly what they do. That is their plan. It is a blueprint. It is what works in various circles. What people don't understand is that the Fabian Society, who have been about since 1884, and a Marxist group that, again, founded on Karl Marx, every single Labour Prime Minister has been a member of the Fabian Society. Sadiq Khan is an executive member of the Fabian Society. Tony Blair, a war criminal, and certainly what I would say is pure evil, is a executive member of the Fabian Society. Every one of his cabinet, bar one, were Fabians. So if you understand in depth who and what the Fabian Society are, and I'm just going to give everyone an insight here, over 300 members of Parliament are Fabians. They are Fabian Society members. Their allegiance is to Marxism, not to you. And just to give you an indication, Oliver Letwin, who was the policy maker and one of the senior members of the Conservative Party for a very long time, is also a Fabian. There are many others Fabians in the Conservative Party. The Conservatives, or the Tories, as you refer to them, or we refer to them today, are not conservative. They are socialists. And you can see that by the nonsense that's happening now, right? So when you talk about chaos, so let me just take you back to a point, and this isn't about politics, people. This is about the structure and the culture of our nation, England, and we are sovereign, right? So let me just point something out here. Prior to King Athelred bringing us together under one nation as under God, we were separate feuding kingdoms. So, for example, Mercia, Cumbria, Bernicia, Kent, Essex, Sussex, etc. They was all within England, but they were feuding. Yeah, so they all got brought together, and then we had counties, districts, and parishes, and each one of them areas basically had its own. It was a distributed power system, which is really important to understand. So the people and the local people had control over their own lives. Invariably, they wouldn't ever get involved with the government as such. What you've got to remember is, and this comes back to your point of chaos and order, is the European Union then set up a process to regionalise England into 9 regions. So London is a region, and then you have the different, but they are regions, and England disappears as a nation. Scotland is a single region, Wales is a single region, Northern Ireland is a single region, Southern Ireland is a single region. but England is broken up. Now, often people go, little England. And I always say to them, we're that small, why are you breaking us up into regions? 9 regions. We had, all of our industries removed by these socialists to destroy the power base of England. So when you talk about the situation of out of chaos you get order, they intended to take England back to the feudal past by splitting us into regions and then turning the regions against each other. That's exactly what their plan was, which is one of the reasons why I stand up and say no to regionalisation. In fact, we need to take London back, and it is fairly simple to do, to be honest. So again, the English Democrats have got a plan to bring England together as one nation. And I want to emphasise to everyone, your identity as an Englishman is not denoted by the colour of your skin. It is denoted by your belief and your allegiance to this country and your countrymen and women. That's it.
Yes, it's a good point you make, Graham. My eyes have been opened up a lot recently. I've got a friend, Mike McCarthy. Hello, Mike, if you're watching. He touches on all the points that you're saying, and I'll be honest, a lot of it is just, as I said, open my eyes. There's some things that work in society, and there's some things that they just don't work. As left wing or whatever or liberal as you want to be, that don't mean that it works. Right? I'm trying to pick my words carefully, because obviously you're not a racist. I think I say this about 20 times a day. I love everybody. Yeah. I love humanity. I love the universe. I think it's the only way to be. If you want all your goals and dreams to come true, you need to get to a point in your life where you have unconditional love. So it's not like a hippie thing or a stupid thing or a greedy. It's like I want my dreams to come true, and because I have this philosophy, all of my dreams in these wonderful countries have all come true. Having said that, this kind of notion of the melting pot, we'll chuck in every member and it's all going to come out good in the end.
That's not, well, so the most important thing is not to conflate two issues, which is exactly what the socialists and these liberal, whatever you want to describe them as, do. Do not conflate racial integration with multiculturalism. They are two separate things. And I'll give you an example of that. There have been black people in England for hundreds and hundreds of years. They are not the indigenous population, but they have been here for hundreds of years, right? I'll give you another example of that. There is a guy called Granville Sharp. He was a tailor from Durham. Most people have never heard of him. He was the person that stopped slavery in common law jurisdictions around the world. He was not an advocate. He was not a lawyer. He researched and taught himself law. And a black slave was held on a ship, and he went there and issued on his own behalf a writ of habeas corpus to the High Court in England, and then argued for that black slave that he should be freed. And again, the slave masters employed the big barristers of the day to argue their case that the black was their property. And the judge said, from the arguments of Granville Sharp, you need to possibly reconsider what you're doing in this court. You may not like my judgment. And they carried on. And the judge made that judgment. And within that judgment contained the phrase, free the black. Because no free man or no slave can breathe the air of England, so therefore he must be free. And that set a precedent that any slave that set foot on English soil, any slave, was a free man if they could get to the soil of England. And people have never heard of Granville Sharp, the man that taught himself English law and battled for what he saw as his Englishman's rights. And it didn't matter what colour they was. So again, people really do need to understand there is a difference between racial integration and cultural integration. They are different things. The cultures of some places in Africa, Pakistan, India, and I can go on and on, are completely different to the cultures of England. And bringing all those cultures into one area is never going to work, because the cultures will never agree with each other. It's like bringing feudal tribes again back together. That's not going to work. You need to have a single culture. You can be multiracial, but you need to have a single culture. So the next element is, are there cultures that consider themselves to be more dominant? Well, the answer is there is. So I'm going to give you two examples of my feelings on this. The first is, I do not like the Catholic religion. And people often look at me and say, oh, right, so you're now a sectarian. And I go, no, that's not what I said. Why are you twisting what I'm saying? And I've said, I was married to a Catholic for 33 years. You know, I loved her dearly. You know, I've got family who are Catholic. I didn't say I didn't like Catholics. I said I didn't like the Catholic religion. I don't like the theology element of the religion. And there are many reasons for that. One of the reasons for that is because the secrets of society were fed back to Rome via the confession box. It was the original Secret Service. It was the original spying on the people, the original Stasi. And people need to understand that that is just one element that I don't like. The second is Islam. Islam is an ideology, not a religion. It is genocidal in its nature. It is all-controlling in its nature, which is at odds with the individual as an Englishman under our constitution. And by the way, our constitution forbids Sharia. So people have to understand it's not Muslims that I don't like. It is the theology of Islam and the ideology of Islam I don't like. And there is a distinction between the two. And that is the bit that you will get all these, again, chaos out of order. They will lie about what you've said and what you say. And, you know, they'll wait for the smallest tiny mistake in your words to accuse you of being a racist. Well, let me tell you something. I'm not sure about you, my friend, but I've never actually met a racist. I've met many bigoted people at various stages of my life, but a racist is like a psychological condition where they believe that their race is superior to all others, right? They're very few and far between, and I promise you I've never actually met a racist. Now, bigotry is something different. Bigotry is not racism. Bigotry means at some point in that person's life, something has triggered them to think that way. And the only way you'll ever get to the issue or what's caused that bigotry is if you talk about it. And then, you know, often people would say, you know, I've spoke to many different people on different subjects. And when you start to put your side, as long as you can have a sensible sense they're sort of, yeah, you know, I get that, you know. Or something could have happened to them 20 or 30 years ago, and it has created their bigotry from that one incident. And then, you know, things move on. Things can change. And that's the positive. And you must always look at the positive outcome. If you're going to sit there and be negative, even towards bigots, you're never going to get anywhere. Everyone's got some experience in life, and I believe everyone has got some form of bigoted opinions somewhere. And it's normally stems from a bad experience. It may even be, you know, you could have a really negative opinion about, I don't know, bankers, or, you know, not all bankers are bad. You know, some of them are very bad, but not all of them bad.
Yeah, it's, I would say hot potato, because it sounds like I'm trying to skirt around controversy. My childhood, massively racist. We were just indoctrinated into it, and it's horrible now that I own my own mind now, but I recognize where the prejudice, which is almost like the infrastructure of your mind that you can't change.
Yeah.
It's up there, Graham. You know, and I'm just being honest now, right? I mean, when I was at school, you know, the jokes were horrible. When Blue Peter, they would do an appeal for the famine, say in Cambodia or Africa or something, all the kids at school were like, that. It's just the butt of, or the source of so many like racist jokes, right? And it's up for people listening. Prejudice is what you have in your head and you can't change. It's like not a blueprint. It's instilled in you from such a young age that it sways your, it has an effect on how you think. Racism is acting out that prejudice. So that's quite a good thing, because if you check your behavior and you recognize your prejudice, then you don't commit the racist like action, right? With respect to Islam, Graham, it's a toughie. I want to say there's parts of my life where I have adopted, I don't know if it's the right term, Islamic culture. And I'll tell you where. It's because I've worked in, say, Mozambique. I've driven to, as people know, I've driven volunteer journalists to India and back. So that's through Iran, Pakistan, Turkey, which is kind of a moderate Islamic nation, or a bit more secular, I think is the right term. And do you know what? It's so special when you meet a stranger on the road and they've got a loaf of bread or a bun. I can't even think of a roll, right? And immediately they pull it out of their bag, they rip it in half, and they've given you half before you even, like, your brain's kicked into gear. It's that wonderful desert philosophy that, you know, if a stranger's coming this way and I treat him, when I come through his land, he's going to treat me. So there's some, the other thing as well, and we're really big on it in this family, it might sound a bit silly to some people at home, but like, we don't play with our food. In this house, you eat your food, you eat all your food, and you don't do this thing where you know, chuck food across the table or throw loads in the bin, all this sort of stuff. And I got that from, in Turkey, actually, an Iranian chap I met in Turkey, that when we were driving this bus to India, my fellow driver, Lee, rest in peace, threw me a bread, right? And this Iranian go, whoa, no, bad, you know, respect food. It's not to be just chucked across the table. I know they might sound a bit silly, but anyway, what I'm trying to say is, yeah, those philosophies are wonderful. It's the radical thing, isn't it? And the Sharia thing where it all starts to become a different animal, Graham, you know?
Well, and again, you have to understand there's three elements to Islam. There is the Quran, and I'll get back to the Quran in a couple of seconds because you've made a couple of comments which I'll sort of go back on. You then have what's known as the Sunnah of Muhammad, which is the autobiography of Muhammad, the life of Muhammad, and also the Hadith. But then you also have Sharia and the Hadiths. So there's three elements. It's actually a trilogy. A trilogy. It's not about the Quran, and it's often said that it is. The two bad parts, or the worst parts, are in fact Sharia and the Sunnah of Muhammad. That's without question. Getting back to the Quran, there are two elements of the Quran. It was written in two different stages of Muhammad's life. First was Mecca, which is the good part, if you like, of the Quran, and then Medina, the Quran, which is, now what they do is it's all chopped about. You have to go through it and it's very difficult to do it unless you actually buy a chronological Quran. And what they actually say is that new verses abrogate the old verse. So often you will hear a verse, and most people will only tell you the first part of the verse because the second part of the verse is the nasty bit. Well, it's the second bit, which is the bit that takes precedent, not the nice bit, right? So there's things that people under a lot of what you've just described, some of that, when you say, you know, breaking the bread and giving you half, some of that comes from Ramadan, where they share their food after a certain time period. But some of that is different. It's not. You may have been in a secular society, or you may have been in an Islamic country, but it may be the culture of the country that they share. It's not really directly related to the religion itself or the ideology itself. There are certain elements to it that are, but not that many. So getting back to the core element of that, you also mentioned Turkey. It was Erdogan himself that said there is no such thing as moderate Islam. There is only Islam. It was Erdogan himself that said that. So people need to understand there is only one. There is no such thing as a radical Islam. There is only Islam. The problem that you've got, and this is the way I see it, is you have what's known as, and I'll give you an example, Orthodox Islam. And Orthodox Islam is, in effect, ISIS. That's Orthodox. People may not like that, but that's fact. And when you actually read and go into the history instead of having blinkers on that the liberals do have, I'm not suggesting in any way or form. Let me put it this way: if you look at Muslims, let's talk about in England. Many of them are in fear, not of us, but of their own ideology and friends and family. Because if they leave the ideology, they are under threat of death. They will be ostracized. They will be beaten. Women in this country, for example, have been murdered simply because they want to marry a Christian. And it is considered as a dishonoring Muhammad, who didn't like Christians or Jews, or anyone else for that matter. So the whole point of it is, what I'm trying to say is, for us as a nation, as a free nation and individual rights, what I would say is that I am giving the right to those that are within that ideology to walk away from it if they wish, without being under threat of death, violence, or ostracization from their families. They would have another family that they could go to. So again, it isn't a racial issue. And again, just to make a quick point on that, the amount of times people refer to or Islamophobia or whatever as racist. Islam is not about race. There are many races in Islam. The same as Christianity. So it's not a racial issue. It's literally about the theology. And in that particular ideology, there are 3 sections to it, which is the Quran that's in 2 parts, the Hadiths and Sharia, and then you have the Sunnah of Muhammad. So the easy answer is I've got no issues whatsoever if Islam was to go through a reformation in the same way as Christianity did, but they won't, because they say that the Quran, the Hadith, and the Sunnah of Muhammad is the word of God, and that is exactly how they're going to follow it to the letter. That's what causes the issue.
Yes, and also, this... Again, I'm sorry if I'm not choosing my words the right way. There's a massive following of Islam in a huge swathe of the world, where I'm just going to have to say this. I don't mean to offend, but where I don't even know how to say it, Graham. I'm going to say the thinking is different. Very passionate about praying to Allah. Is it the 4 times a day and
5 times a day?
When I've met people like this on my travels, and you tell them that you don't have a religion, I'm a free man. They gobsmack. They cannot believe that you don't believe in and I'm not even going to say what I believe, folks. It's irrelevant. But
yeah.
The point I'm making is it's like there's no room for a dialogue there. It's just 100% committed. And I'm not saying this as a criticism. I'm just saying it to add to our conversation.
Oh, I agree.
On the other, to the other side of the coin, when people call England a Christian nation, there's people like me that are a bit like, well, fuck off. I'm free. I was born on this rock called England. It 2,000 years ago, Christianity started, I'm guessing, with the birth of the Jesus. What about all the millions of years before that, when it was?
Yeah, a lot of you're right. A lot of Christian rituals are pre-exist Christianity. So you're right in what you're saying there. When I talk about this being a Christian country, I talk about adhering to the 10 Commandments, which are the basic human rights of everyone. You shouldn't commit adultery, you shouldn't steal, you shouldn't do all these certain things. But let me just get back to a couple of quick ones that you just said there, and I'm just going to give you an example. This is between Jewish and Islam, right? I'm going to give you an example. The Jews say that Jews should not eat pork.
Sorry, who?
Muslims say nobody can eat pork. Can you see the difference?
Right. Can you just say that again, just for clarity? The first...
So this is just to give a simple example, right? So Jews say that they are not allowed to eat pork.
Okay.
Yeah. They can't eat bacon. Yeah. Whereas Muslims say nobody is allowed to eat pork, eat bacon. Can you see the difference between the two? So
is that all Muslims, though, Graham, or is it just these kind of, what do you call them, religious clerics or extremists?
oh, that's all. Well, as far as you again and again, I do want to emphasise this. You have people that call themselves Christians that are not Christians. They have never, they don't adhere to any of the Christian. It wouldn't be someone I would regard as a Christian. Yeah. Mm. Well, you do have people that refer to themselves as Muslims, and they haven't got an Islamic trait about them. So what I'm saying is, no, it isn't about all of them, and that is why I emphasise the fact to people. I don't like the Catholic religion, but I was married to a Catholic for 33 years that I love very much. So it's not, I want people to understand that there is a difference between saying I don't like that and what it stands for, but it doesn't mean I hate all Catholic people. That's just a nonsense. But the left and the liberals will conflate it to make it mean that, and it doesn't mean that at all. That's the crucial element to it. But there's many other. I'll just give you another example, and this may be a flippant comment, and if it is, I apologise to anyone it offends. I don't know any other religion on earth, and I'm talking about Islam, that says that you cannot drink alcohol, but you can drink camel's urine. It beggars belief that they would say, or offer you a glass of camel's urine, and they think that is perfectly okay, but to offer you a pint of lager is an absolute, abomination. I just don't get it.
Can I chip in there? And I feel really bad, Graham, because you're a very nice man, and you're a guest on my show, but in the dialogue thing, I would, because communication is everything. We got to talk, haven't we? We got to talk, and this is a thing that's happening in society, especially through the social medias. People are being told, no, you have to shut up. You are not allowed to think the way it's the old bloody, here's my book. No surprise. This is always on my desk now, right? Thought police, not allowed, thought police, language is changing. It's all kicking off, right? But going back to your camel's urine thing, I never thought I'd be discussing that on a podcast, but the right to tell someone else what they can do is like, no, it's like me. I've had I've taken lots of drugs in my life. I've paid the piper for doing that. I knew when I was doing it, I would have to take the ride, and it was going to be a near-death one, and I was still like, fuck it. I had no choice, Graham. It was in my head. I went that route, right? As such, people often think I'd be like anti-drugs. Absolutely not. You fucking do what you live your life. I'll live mine, and that's great, right?
Yeah.
So with respect to the alcohol thing, I would never tell anyone what they can and can't do, with their body, as long as they're not hurting another individual. But from a Islamic point of view, I would just proffer that they probably recognize the damage that alcohol can do. And when you become addicted to alcohol, it's like the fucking devil's got you. It's horrible. It's that waking up. Your first thought is, right, where's my drink today? Am I going to go co-op and get a 6-pack? It gets you. It fucking gets inside you. It really is. If we're going to use terms like evil, the bloody devil's got you, right? And I think these, and Sweden, I'll come on and talk about Sweden and Norway, because there's a relative connection there. But I think these cultures, the Islamic culture, just recognize that alcohol does end up not doing a lot of people favors, right? the camel urine thing is probably related to survival in the desert, is it not? Is it, you know?
I don't disagree with survival in the desert, or, you know, if that's what they do, that's what they do. But I mean, I can tell you some other stories about that. Well, I won't go into it. It's a bit disgusting. But at the end of the day, what I'm saying is, you know, to say to anyone, you cannot drink. It is absolutely banned. I mean, some countries, if you get caught with alcohol, they'll flog you. And I'm not talking about selling you. I'm talking about flogging you. They will whip you. You know, literally take the flesh off your back. So again, it is about complete control. And I agree with you. As an individual, I believe if you take drugs, yeah, but don't affect anyone else around you. That's the biggest problem that I have with people, you know, that take drugs. Alcohol. I haven't got a problem with people taking alcohol and getting drunk, as long as they don't get drunk and get violent and then get violent towards me, and I have to deal with their alcohol abuse, right? They're the things that I don't like. That's where people need to take responsibility for their own actions, where you've just said you did take responsibility for your own actions. You know, you knew it was a bad thing to do. You knew it could take you to a bad place, and you would be the one who had to deal with it. It's when everybody else around you is dealing with that problem as well. That's the bit that I don't like. And again, I mean, that's caused me some issues with people in my family. So, you know, I agree with that. I mean, I've got a serious weight problem. I mean, a couple of years ago, I had a heart attack. I put weight on, and I need to get my weight off. You know, I would dearly love for someone to come along and say, well, I'll train you out. You can lose, but I know how you can lose weight. But, you know, all of these things, they're personal issues, and you know, they shouldn't be someone else's problem. You've just held up that book, 1984. I mentioned the Fabian Society. 1984, the book, was actually written to commemorate the centenary of the Fabian Society, just to let people know what that book's about. So it's not about 1984, it's about 100 years of the Fabian Society. So if you imagine what it says in that book, you then know what the Fabian Society are intending. That's what it is.
What's the point of this book? I mean, I'm always recommending people read it, because I was studying at uni. I think I was actually on my Access to Uni course, right? Which is a whole new, I'm a thick old stupid bloody Marine, right? Bootneck, we call it. So all this university thing was like I thought, you know, university, they were those clever people on the bloody, was it University Challenge, isn't it? You know, they've all got rich families that they get put to Oxford and Cambridge, and that was my upbringing. So the actual notion of me going to uni was quite, but then of course there's a whole nother, you know, university's been made easier. It's basically to trap you in a financial trap for the rest of your working life, i.e. you have to pay your 20 or 30,000 pound bloody student loan back to these corporate criminals for the rest of your life. That's why everyone goes uni these days. And it makes the unemployment statistics look better, because we haven't got any bloody industry anymore. So young people aren't going into factories, dockyards, steelworks, all this. They go to uni instead, right? Anyway, slight tangent.
Did you actually say that?
Say again.
Did you actually say, can I have an E, please, Bob?
That was, what the hell? That was,
it was a university thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, that was the other one, was it not? That was Blockbusters.
That's it, Blockbusters.
Yeah, no, it's your starter for 10.
That's it, starter for 10.
Yeah, who has the best podcast in the world? It's Chris THRALL. Yes. But yeah, so anyway, I'm going to uni, and I work with a very nice chap, Mark. Hello, Mark, if you're watching. And he went, Chris, 1984, you've got to, if you want to make sense of what's going on in the world, read that book. Well, bloody hell, I read it and suddenly it made sense of everything that's going on in the world. And you got to remember, this was 20 bloody years ago, Graham, you know? So
Yeah.
hasn't, not what we're seeing now. This was the early days where you could start to see the seeds of the social control, the mind, the mind conditioning, the mind control, the bickering, the pettiness, the you know, the civil reporting, you know, where your neighbor actually, you know, you're having a conversation 1 minute, then you say bye, and they go and pick up the phone and report you to the bloody police, right? Which is what we're seeing now. Yeah. And of course, it was just the seeds back 20 years ago. Now it's full blown. What is in this book is happening. You know, the language changing, again, we've got to be careful what we say here, but like I think people know when we say the ridiculousness of certain situations, the laws that are being just made, and this goes back to what we're saying about the English Constitution, that are just unconstitutional. There's nothing behind these laws. It's like this thing at the minute that you have to do a certain thing in a certain place. I'd love to actually see the law behind that. I think you'd find that there wasn't one, right? I think you'd find that there wasn't one. But anyway. So yeah. Why would the Fabian Society then, Graham, put a book out about what they're actually doing? If I know that these bloody Satanists and esoteric groups love to shove it in your face. It seems like when they do something, they have to show you it first, and most people are kind of oblivious.
George Orwell was a Fabian, and then he left, and then, as my understanding, he wrote a book to say this is what they're going to do. So in effect, it was an expose of the Fabian Society. But 1984 was the centenary. That's what that book was about. Was 100 years of Fabianism. This is what's going to happen. So if you look at when he wrote the book, which I can't remember when it was, I think it was the early 20s, might have been before that, I'm not sure. He's actually given you a prediction of what 100 years of Fabianism is going to look like.
Yes, I think it was this first published in 1949. I think we've got a.
Yeah.
What I want to say is, like, I'm always talking about who is behind this agenda. It's clearly an agenda. This mass immigration, which just seems to be designed to further destroy our identities as a country. And guys, this is not racist. If you think it's racist, you're probably a bit naive, right? This is not trying to be racist here. I'm just saying that, look at Sweden. Oh my God. I don't think it was an open door immigration policy. I think it's more that they were really welcoming of refugees, right? But I can tell you something, that having driven around the world, you get approached by people that say, Chris, could you shove me under your bus? As in, like, can you, like, hide me in the luggage compartment and take me back to England, right? Or actually, we drove to India from Norway, right? You actually get people come up to you, and you make friends with these people. They're good people, but they want a better life, and they say, Chris, can I get I'll hide under your bus and you take me back to Europe, right? And of course they're going to claim asylum. Of course, that's the ticket to a life in the UK. I've literally been on a bus where when it's got to the border, we stopped 1 mile away from the border. A family on the bus have gone outside with a driver. I'm like, oh, it's a smoke break. So I went out to have a rollie or something, right? The driver's like, no, you back on the bus, right? I'm like, oh, okay, there's something going on here. The driver's screwing them into a secret compartment under the bus, right, to smuggle them across the border. This happens. Why are we seeing, you get this cliche, middle-aged, fighting men in their prime. You see these people, these hordes of, sorry, people sounds rude. I don't mean to be rude, but you see these hordes of immigrants, and they're marching, across Europe or whatever. And everyone's like, they're fighting age males, they're ISIS, No, what it is under the Human Rights Act, or the kind of immigration, the Asylum Seeker Act. If you get into a country and claim asylum and you're accepted, then your family has the equal right to come and join you. This is why you see the men coming. It's once they've been established, and they and I've worked in asylum, and I've seen both sides. I've seen genuine asylum seekers that have had a fucking horrible story. One guy, like, oh my God, something like 22 days inside a lorry to escape the persecution in his country, and nice people, good people. But I've also seen the guy that clearly came here under asylum, but is basically what an economic migrant, Graham, right?
Yeah.
They get here and they go, and I'm talking in the capacity of a support worker. So when I went through uni, I worked with asylum seekers, right, for one of my placements. Chris, how come, like, I can claim the unemployment benefit and I get this a week, but if I do a job, they stop it? Why? Your country's so stupid. And I'm like, well, welcome to England. Yes, it is fucking, it's a fucking quagmire, and it ain't fun, mate. Everyone will try and take your money. BBC, tax, it's a shit show. Your freedom is fucking destroyed in this country, right? But my point is, that guy is not an asylum seeker. If he's an asylum seeker, he'd be, Chris, thank you so much to your country but I was going to get killed back home, and you've given me a place. Thank you. I will try and make it work. No, he's talking economics, right? How much money can I make? Why can't I do this? Why are they going to stop my unemployment benefit if I work? I had to explain to him, you have to report. If you can work 16 hours a week or whatever it is, you still have to tell the dole office. You've got to, you can't just go and do it, right? Sorry, I'm probably gone on one a bit there, Graham, but
no, I agree with what you're saying, and some of what you've described there, I agree with. The bit that really upsets me are these people that come here as asylum seekers and then want to recreate their country in this country, exactly what they have, aimed to escape. I'm talking about the real asylum seekers, the ones who were going to be killed. Right? So that's the first thing. So I agree with what you're saying, and I do agree that there are economic migrants, there are real refugees that are in fear of their lives. The element that I disagree with is don't come here and then want to recreate your country and your culture in my country, which recreates the problem that you run away from.
This
right?
is the hardline Islam thing, isn't it? This is the you get.
It could be Islam. It could be. I mean, there's different things. I mean, South Africa. There's different elements in Africa where it is cultures rather than religion that drives the violence. It may be a tribal hatred. They're all the same colour. They're the same race, but they hate each other because of their cultures clash. But what I'm saying is, I don't want them bringing that here and it's clash here. The next element of what you just said, again, is very, very similar in what I believe anyway. Is again, you've got the economic migrants. If they was to control their own country and take on their own country in terms of be supported there rather than here, they can establish their country as a place where they can earn money. It's because of the corruption. And again, this country is now becoming corrupt because of what we've allowed to happen. And to a larger effect, that's socialism. That's what it does. It corrupts.
Yes. Because we're talking about this on the podcast, there's a few things I just want to highlight to people. First of all, I just want to give a shout out to my mate Naz Hussein QC. Very wonderful man, supports me like no end. And I almost feel like a bit guilty talking about this subject because he's from originally from Pakistan. His son, Sal, hello Sal, if you're listening, very good friend of mine. And so I'm kind of like a bit not treading carefully, but I'm very conscious like what I'm saying. I don't want to upset anyone because it's not about that, but I do want the truth. It's the whole point of my podcast is the truth. And when I was in Pakistan and Iran, like I'll just give you one situation. We went back to this family for food, and of course it's the very kind offering you their bed, giving you their food, all that I've experienced all around the world, that wonderful hospitality that British people don't really do as well, but let's not stir a hornet's nest. And I was at this house and the father went, come, and he had this glint in his eye, like I thought he was going to go and, you know, show me his AK-47 and we're going to have a shoot or something. No, took me in a, which has happened, you know, has happened to me before. Anyway, so we go into his bedroom and he pulls open.
Oh, yeah, good.
No, mate, I never get that lucky, Graham. In the Marines, we call it on plums. That means like you never get a bag off, as we call it in the Marines, which is sex. But we went in his bedroom and he pulled this drawer, and under his clothes, he took this magazine out. In fact, it wasn't even a whole magazine. It was like 3 pages or something.
Yeah.
And he went, look, and he's beaming as though he's showing me something that I would never have seen before. And it was a woman sat, let's just say sat on a chair.
Yeah.
And you could see up her skirt and you could just see a bit of her knickers, right?
Yeah.
And again, folks, if you're listening, this is not a criticism. I'm trying to put things in perspective. That this guy, the notion of a woman that you could see her oh my God, it was like this massive thing in his life. He thought he was showing me something that I'd never seen before. You don't know in England, you get that in every bloody newsagent shop front. It's disgusting, you know, all this up skirt photos and all that, you know, demeaning bloody women, if you ask me, right? And what I'm trying to say is we need to recognize that if we have any kind of like open door policy, or even if it's asylum seeking for all the right reasons, whatever, we are dealing with a very different mentality. We just are. And to pretend that we're all equal and we're all just, you know, we're all equal. Of course we are. We're all God's creatures or creatures of the universe, whatever your terminology is. But I take it one step further. So when you hear of these rape gangs that have not just surfaced in Britain, and it's a fucking problem. You can't have kids being fucking raped by grown men. And in Sweden, they now got no-go areas. They've got ghettos because they, let's just say naively, thought, yes, come to us. We will welcome you. And it's turned very bad over there. You know, one of my big supporters, a chap that I chat with very regularly, lives in Malmö in southern Sweden. I've been in Malmö. I've been fundraising for charity in Malmö. A beautiful university town in Sweden. Now it's like no-go areas there. Police won't go there. You know, this sort of thing. Sorry, I'm not trying to be dramatic. I'm just trying to talk the truth, folks.
No, go on. I agree. That's the whole problem. That they won't tell you the truth.
If I can just give you one more anecdote. I was in Norway, and I think I mentioned this in our phone call. I had a Swedish girlfriend at the time. We both worked in a supermarket. It's called Kiwi. And one night she's there on the till in Norway, and two Sudanese young men came in. They pointed a Kalashnikov, an assault rifle at her face and went, "Give us the money," right? My girlfriend, being a very naive Swedish, where there's no crime in Sweden with Swedes. It's very little. Like, they don't have cameras and that in shops because the notion of stealing from one of your community is just like weird, right? It really, there's I'll talk about the drinking thing as well. But so these guys point this AK-47 in her face, say, "Give us the money," and she went, "Why?" Right, because she couldn't understand it, Graham, what was going on in her life. This sort of thing is like never going to happen, right? So that's that. The other thing I was just talking was a point about alcohol. In Scandinavia, you have something called Jantelagen. It's unwritten law, right?
Yeah.
It permeates Scandinavia, and it's fascinating, but it's also really frightening, right? And in my humble assessment, I'd say it goes back to the Viking times when, or everything in Scandinavia is commune based. You live in a commune. You get an ID card, and you're part of this commune, right? And it's lovely. It's community. It's almost not socialist, obviously, because they're one of the richest countries in the world, but it's but Jantelagen means unwritten law, and some of those laws are things like you can be successful in business, you can make your million, but you are not allowed to think you're better than other people. You're just not. If you start going on that bloody chariot, the community are gonna, they will bring you back down to earth pretty quickly, The other thing, which especially as a Brit, which is quite interesting, is you don't drink during the week. It's absolutely, it's softened now, but it was, when I was there, it was taboo to drink except for a Friday and a Saturday. And again, if you think going back to their let's just say Viking, to use a cliche, communities, if you had bloody, Stig, he's on the old bloody ale on a Monday morning, well, he's not going to be contributing to that community, is he? He's going to be off his head, basically a useless sort. And it was kind of recognized that it's not good. Weekend, let's have a party, let's go for it, fine. Drinking in the week, gonna lead to problems, right? And it's fascinating that that's come through to this day, Graham. Apologies, I'm not sure how this relates to our conversation, but that's my
again you've got an unwritten, so we've got what's known as a common law constitution. Some of it is written, some of it is by oath, and some of it is what's known as customs. Ancient customs. So what you're talking about is a Scandinavian, the ancient customs. You cannot do this, this, and this. It don't have to be written. It's passed down by the people, right? That is a genuine law, right? So what you've just described there is a good thing, but it's part of their culture, and you respect that, even though it's not written. You respect it as part of their culture. In their country, they say don't drink all week except at weekends, then you drink at weekends. I do understand that.
Yeah, it's funny because you'll be, with a group of Scandinavians, so you maybe with some Swedish friends, and you're like, guys, quick beer, and they're like, and they start looking at each other because they know that in our culture that's perfectly acceptable to go for a beer on a Thursday night. It's fine. But they know in their culture it's not, but they don't want to appear like they're not like up on your culture. They're not like down with the kids sort of thing, and they're yeah, let's go for a beer. And you can see it's so fucking awkward for them, right? Because it's
Yeah.
Jontelag and it's unwritten law. It's like this secret code that's never, you can't find it written down. Well, you probably can these days, but fascinating.
Mm.
I'm not trying to brand everybody, but I'm just saying when you have this open door bloody kind of immigration policy, which, let's be honest, it's designed to destroy our identities. It's designed to fuck everything up. That's what it's about. It's not about, it's designed to get British people fighting against Pakistani, criticizing the Afro-Caribbean, all this, like, let's just create chaos because, as I said, order out of chaos. So I just wanted to chuck that in the pot because some people might not realize these differences, Graham. They might not understand that. And it's okay to be different. An ancient culture doesn't have to be the same as England. And I'm sure there's lots of stuff we do in England that are probably abhorrent. Well, there are. The naked thing is abhorrent in these countries, They look at us like we're
I agree entirely. And let me just say this to you. The world is now a small place. If you really want to be multiculturalist, there is nothing stopping you from really, going to India if you want to live to India, go for a big long holiday in India, go all these places. You don't actually have to bring it here. That's the first thing. Whereas, 100 years ago, 150 years ago, obviously it took, 6 weeks to get anywhere. So there's lots of things like that, now could lean towards, you just flying there or doing things in a different way. But I believe that ancient cultures, it's a bit like if you look at, I don't know, let's say the Brethren in this country, which are all Orthodox Christians, yeah. If you look at the Hamish in America, they live in a world of 200 years ago.
Mm.
Leave the community alone, they're fine. You won't see any of them wearing masks currently. But the main but what I'm trying to say to you is that I don't mind letting let live and just get on with your life. But for me, it's about an individual choice. You shouldn't have other people forcing you to think a certain way and do things a certain way. You do it the way you want to do it. Like you said when you started the show, that was you're not anti-drugs, even though you had a problem with drugs. But you take responsibility for what you did with drugs, yeah? Because you're an individual. And you're also a man, because a lot of people don't take responsibility. My view is only a stand-up person takes responsibility for what they've done. You say yes, no, yeah, all right, I'll get my head down, I've done it. It's a bit like if you're in the army and you have a punch-up and you end up, in army prison, you're okay.
It's also, Graham, I think worth pointing out for people listening, you adopt a victim mentality, you're going to get to the grave faster. It don't help you to think of yourself as shit happens to us in life. I've had stuff from a very young age that wasn't, what wasn't pleasant. I've had stuff in the military that wasn't pleasant. I've had stuff when I worked for the 14K, the Hong Kong Triads, that wasn't, do I look back and feel sorry for them? Absolutely not. To me, it's all just experience, It's all experience.
Yeah,
no, my gran always said, life ain't fair and no one ever bloody promised you it should be, right? And that's kind of been my mantra. But Graham, let's get back to let's take a different angle. Who, right? I think I know who is behind this agenda to fragment us all and control us and technocratize us and make us, put stuff in our bodies that I'm picking my words carefully here, by the way, that I ain't going to have in my body, and I'm sure other people are not going to have it in their bodies, right? Who who is behind it all? Because there seems to be different agendas in play. Like, for example, when you look at the events in New York there 20 years ago, I'm not going to say the number, but everyone knows the number I mean. Like, you could clearly see the orchestrators of that event, especially if you know how to bloody use the internet. It's all there for you to know. The guy that comes out on the TV, it was OBL, you know, that guy. They said that within 20 minutes of these things coming down, they'd already got their bad guy, right?
I think first of all, it goes up much higher than, I believe there's only a small amount of people, less than 100 at the very top that are orchestrating everything. They're the actual puppet masters. In the old days, many corporations, many TV channels, many radio stations were owned independently and not by a single corporate entity. Now, controlling the global media, mainstream news media, is literally 6 or 7 companies, which means 6 or 7 CEOs control the global media. What you know, when you start to research who those people are, not necessarily their religion, because I can explain to you one person, a guy called Peter Sutherland, who is now deceased. Again, he was a Fabian Society member. He worked for Goldman Sachs. He was also the chairman of the London School of Economics, which is a Fabian university. When you look at everything that guy did, he just happened to be Irish. He also worked for the UN, and it was his particular policy with the EU to flood the EU and Ireland and UK and other countries with immigration. When you look at him, you know, if you look at his history, it says that he's a Roman Catholic. You know, I would suggest that he probably isn't. The Khazarian or whatever they're called, of a distinct look about them. And I certainly believe that could be part of what the issue is.
These people all work on blackmail, don't they? You know, you get these people into power. They're put in power because they're blackmailable. They have done stuff, you know, usually sexual stuff, inappropriate, if not highly criminal. You know, this is why they get into power, is then these
then they're controlled.
These evil sociopaths that we're talking about that are destroying all of us. It's not just about England. They're destroying the world. They won't be happy until we are just a bunch of brainwashed muppets that live in, I don't know if we're going to live in cages or it's going to be the Orwellian, you know, and it's happening. Friends, if you're watching, this is happening. I'm not trying to be dramatic. It's just when you see through this agenda, then when you see what's going on at the minute, you realize how farcical it is and how flimsy this facade that they maintain, and they do it so easily because the people pray for it. And I don't know if there's ever going to be an answer to it. I don't know if maybe human beings are just too freaking stupid. Maybe that's it. Maybe we're destined for this crap, you know. But while I'm living this life, I'm going to keep that warrior spirit, you know. And I don't just mean because I'm military. I mean, I think you're the same, Graham. You know, I'm not having this done to the next generation. They're being enslaved. They're being enslaved.
Yeah.
And we are
the people that hold the eternal flame of freedom, and we cannot drop that. We need to pass it on to the next generation. But in order to be able to do that, we need to be brave enough to stand up and tell the truth to people about what's really going on. And it's a bit like the emperor has no clothes. You know, everyone's thinking what we're thinking. We're the only people actually saying it. The reason why we are hated by the British, while we are hated by the British established parties, which is in effect UKIP, if you like, Conservative Party, Liberal Democrats, and the Labour Party, is because we don't conform to what they want us to look like. We say, no, we're English. We're not left and right. We believe in the rule of law and the Constitution and the individual's rights, the unalienable rights. And that's the bit that these other people don't get. So again, I just want to emphasise to people that if you think there isn't a political party out there, a lot of people say, I'm politically lost. And then people find us and they realise, we've been there for 18 years. Why don't I see you on TV? Because they fear the English and the independent mind of the English more than anything else. That's the truth of it.
So, Graham, my question is, as I said, I've never voted, not because I'm apathetic or this or that, because I won't vote for my own slavery. It's just I won't, There ain't no red and blue or whatever the colours are. It's one sociopathic elite that control the whole thing. You start as a politician because you're a good person. You want to help your community. You get into this position of power. Suddenly you get a whole load of conditions put on you and pressures and funding and politics and all this kind of stuff. And before long, you just then become a puppet for the Illuminati or whatever we're going to call them, right? That's why I won't ever vote. How would the English, is it the English Democrat League? Is that or
the
party?
English Democrat Party.
Yeah. How would they be different? How could you stop this rot setting in?
Well, first of all, you've hit a good. That is a good question. Why are we different? Well, the answer is because the first thing we want to do is dissolve the union, right? Because it's the union that gives that core element and these bureaucrats that are in place, which is the civil service. It dissolves the whole of that and removes the power from the British and returns it back to the English people. I'm talking about the English and the English Constitution. So we're not left nor right. That's the first thing. We do what's best for the country and the people of the country. The second element to that is we don't believe in, multiple terms. So 2 terms as a member of parliament. What does that do? It stops the corruption getting into these people, right? The second element is that I personally don't believe that the Commons is no longer full of common people. In other words, carpenters, bricklayers, people like me, you, normal everyday people. Instead, it is packed with people who have done political degrees. And again, it is the Fabian Society that helped facilitate that in 1911. We would stop that. So real people with real experience of working and being in our own communities would be elected as MPs in an English Parliament. We would also remove the central power base of the UK Parliament and the British, because we would return the power back to the people. That means the county councils. That means the district councils. That means the parish councils. That's what made England great. And the ultimate element of this is that you would remove the structures that are in place that have allowed the elites to control us in the way that they are. That's why the English Democrats are different. But the main reason we are so different is we believe in individual liberties, individual rights, and individuals' rights against the state. In other words, that the state cannot remove your unalienable rights. So again, they've already published a letter from me at the State Department in America from the Commission of Unalienable Rights. And I know that Mike Pompeo has read that letter. I've been told that he's read the letter, and also that 9 members of the Commission have read that. You need to deconstruct the United Nations. Now, people may say, well, how can England do that? Well, I can tell you how England can do it. Once you dissolve the British Union, and I'm not talking about, this is not a negative force towards Scotland, Wales or Northern Ireland or England. This is about the British. The power source is the Act of Union 1706, 1707, and what they proceeded then to create for themselves and take the rights away from the English. So what happens when you dissolve the Union is that all treaties, for example, and let me just give you an indication, because I quite like it when it's more visual, shall we say, yeah? So let's just say that this document is the treaty with the United Nations. When you dissolve the Union, the treaty with the United Nations and Agenda 30 and Agenda 21 goes with it, right? Any European Union commitments to a defence union, once you dissolve the United Kingdom Parliament, everything that they signed illegally goes with it. And then you obviously look at the rest of the situation, you say England now has control, and the individuals with England, every one of their votes count. So you can tear up everything that UK Parliament did, and you can literally say to people, now you have the power. You are the people that control your own lives. Your future generations will control their own lives, but you must always defend your freedom and liberty. And the only way you can do that is with a constitutional or constitutionalist party. So again, I emphasize, forget all this black, brown, yellow, white stuff. It's about the culture. It's about your independence, and it's about you as an individual. But you must take responsibility for your own life. You must stop allowing other people to control your life. You'll be allowed to go out and earn your own money, keep your own money, pay into this system or that system if you want to pay into that system. It's about the free market situation, and it does work. America is the biggest economy in the world, not because it has the largest land base, not because it has the largest population in the world, because it doesn't on either aspect. It is because they have a constitution that is based on the English constitution, and that makes them and gives them the power to invent. And that's exactly what we want to come back to. Our engineering, we will be reintroducing industries that were taken away from us: shipbuilding, the coal industry, the steel industry, space. We would be in coalition, hopefully, with the United States of America. But it's about looking after the individuals. So you as an individual would be voting for that. You would be voting to respect the Constitution and people's individual rights, which you don't have that option anywhere on the political spectrum currently, and especially with the United Kingdom Parliament, which is already in bad faith because they've given back a parliament to Scotland and not give it back to England. So in a nutshell, that is what you're voting for, and that's the difference. But to emphasise to veterans, we wholeheartedly believe and commit to the military covenant, and that is, if you lay your life down for country and the Constitution, you will always be respected. And by laying your life down, I mean, if you sign on the dotted line to serve the country of England, you will always be respected for that. And your service to the country will always be respected.
Which is the complete opposite of what we have at the moment, isn't it? Where
Very
the
much
second
so.
you leave the military, you're just a number. You know, we've had seven suicides this week alone.
Well, again, I'm someone who has suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder. I understand the condition. I understand, you know, I've had the video going in my brain. Certain situations happen and I can smell blood, literally smell blood. I've had the constant adrenaline running 24 hours a day, the no sleep, the nightmares, every element of post-traumatic stress disorder. You know, I feel it, and it like I said, it creeps up on you. It's not something that happens overnight, but once it gets hold of you, it then helps destroy your personal relationships, your concentration. Every element of your life is affected by it. And again, the government, what have they done? And I'll give you an example. And this is not just this government, this is previous governments. They've sold the military hospitals. You know, they've not invested in mental health facilities for the military. And again, I'll say this to people, and this is something I believe in. I used to be a Samaritan, but I'm going to say this to people, and anyone out there who's suffering ill health through serving for this country, I'm going to say this to you, that when you was trained, and you was trained with battlefield medics. So if you see a colleague that's hit the floor, that's bleeding profusely, your training is to stop the bleeding, to put pressure on, to stop the bleeding, to call in for a medical evacuation, to get that person out. And if you have to carry that person, you'll carry him, right? Yeah. Mental issues and post-traumatic stress disorder is no less of an injury. I want you to understand one thing, and especially if you're suffering with this. It is a medical emergency if you are having suicidal thoughts. Go into any A&E, go up to reception and tell them, and I've done this personally, tell them I'm having suicidal thoughts. And they will say, sit. You sit down and then you start to see all the events around you. Someone will come out to you. Eventually, you might have to wait an hour or 2 hours, but you will see a doctor and you will see someone that cares. You will see someone that can relieve that pain you're in there and then, right? It is a medical emergency if you are having suicidal thoughts. In the same way as your colleague or someone has been shot on a battlefield and you're stopping the bleeding, it is exactly the same thing when you walk into that A&E. Just remember that. Consider it as training. And the training is that when you have them thoughts, you go into A&E. That's it.
Yes. I get the impression, because I've seen some of your videos, Graham, that A&E will give you like a priority. Is that right? That
if you go into an A&E and you tell them, so when you call the Samaritans can't help you. All they do, they listen to you, which is good, and people do need to listen to the problems. If you go into an A&E, every A&E department has a mental health trained doctor there or mental health trained nurses there, and they are exceptionally good at their jobs. When you come in and present yourself as someone with suicidal thoughts, again, if you explain that you're a veteran, if it was me, I'll take it further than that. I'd do exactly what President Trump said. And he has actually associated veterans and said, right, if you can't look after them, if they make the phone call, they are entitled to go private and we're paying for it, right? Because these injuries were caused in the service of the country. So therefore, the country needs to look after them. Again, I've got no issues with that, and I believe we should. Again, Robin Tilbrook, who is the leader and the chairman, his father was a brigadier general. and he himself, Robin, was in the military. So again, you know, he's now a lawyer, a solicitor, and he's on our side. So that is the situation. But yeah, they will look after you.
Mm. Graham, this is quite a good point to ask. Was there something, some kind of like therapy, philosophy, meditation, whatever it might be, that helped you to recover? Was there one thing that we can pass on to other people?
There was a particular, and again, I haven't got it in front of me. It's got a funny name. But basically, it was, so let me just, I was in a mental health hospital twice. Once for 3 months, once for, I think, for 4 or 5 months. The point being that psychiatrists and mental health nurses, they can help you to a point. But they all said the same thing. We need you, you need to see a psychologist. So whilst I was given medication, one of those medications is something called sertraline, which definitely helps. The main consideration is a psychologist, right? And people, you know, again, I want to say this to anyone, especially in the military, everyone who knew me, everyone who knows me, yeah, couldn't believe that it happened to me. I was absolutely shocked, right? Because of my personality, because, you know, I could walk in a boozer and have a proper tear up. They all, you know, but what they said to me was, I believed that I was weak because my mind had gone, right? And they kept saying to me, you're not weak, Graham. You've been strong too long. And that's why you've broken now, because you have taken this on yourself and not asked for help. But as soon as you put your hand up for help, we're going to help you. And that's exactly what I did. So I then went to see a psychologist called Peter DeBacco, who just happened to be South African. And we had a number of sessions, and he said to me, can I try something with you? There was a relatively new treatment. And I said, yeah. And he said, the first thing is, he said, I get the impression that you're, you know, pretty intelligent. And he said, the reason I'm saying that is because I'm actually going to explain this treatment to you. And he explained it to me. And basically, he held a pen up. It sounds, I mean, he'd done a lot of other things with it. But you then walk through the experience that causes the issues and the video that's going on in your mind. The actions that caused my senses to smell blood, yeah? So you go through this issue, and I won't going to go through it in detail, obviously. But as you do, you have to repeat how you're feeling, how your heart's feeling. Every element of what happened in them events. And as you talk through them, you follow a pen. It sounds something really simple, and then you follow that pen, and evidently what it does is because you're in a relaxed state talking to a psychologist, when you're recalling the events, and there could be multiple events, the connection with your eye to the different parts of your brain moving with the pen almost resets the function of the memory and starts, it doesn't remove it, because I can still get those visions, but it's a lot more controllable now. It's almost nulled it until non-existent, if you understand what I'm saying. So yeah, definitely worked.
Yeah, it's good. It's worked. I've heard it hasn't worked for everybody. I'm not trying to dismiss it here. No, not at all. But it's great to hear that it did work for you.
Everyone is different. So again, the reason why you need assessment is for them to get to know to you, and certain elements, different symptoms may be treated by a different method. My symptoms were as such. He had used this before on similar symptoms and said, it worked then, so it could work on you. And, we went through it. But again, it's something, the session itself can be, can be slightly distressing, because you're actually going through the detail of what happened, but you're following an eye pattern that in some way reset. You've got to remember how clever the brain is. The human brain is an unbelievable, complex arena of electronic communications inside there, and chemicals, going off in all different areas. So when you start to recall it, and if your adrenaline starts to kick in, I mean, one of the things with post-traumatic stress disorder and the almost instant aggression and fight rather than flight is because of there's something in your brain that triggers adrenaline, which is really bad, 24 hours a day. So it stays in your system. So if anyone's ever been in, I don't know if there's many people out there watching who sort of don't understand it. Imagine if you ever got into a situation where your heart rate went up, your adrenaline is kicked in, your face is drained, and you're ready to go in for a punch-up. You're like that with post-traumatic stress disorder. You're like that all the time. That's it. It doesn't mean you're aggressive with everyone you meet, but if someone even raises their voice, you're absolutely ready to knock them spark out, because you won't tolerate any violence towards you. It's a really strange thing.
Yeah, it's like your fight or flight mechanism is permanently triggered, isn't it? Yeah. And I find it can wake you up. You can be having a good old sleep, and suddenly this buzz comes over you. It's the adrenaline kicking in as your mind starts to contemplate like your day and who's going to come and fuck with you on this day, or what challenges are going to be brought up, and suddenly you get like this buzz, and it's the adrenaline flooding your system. Next thing you know, you're wide awake. It can be sometimes like 4 a.m, and it's horrible. Yeah, you're wide awake. You've got to go and work, and you're like, oh shit, I need some sleep. I need to freaking sleep. I can't sleep. It's awful. So message there for anyone, reach out, okay? Reach out. Watch my Commando coaching videos. I hope they can help you in some way. But yeah, please reach out. Don't suffer in silence. We've all been there. We're there for you. Just do it. Graham, listen, I think we could chat forever. I think 3 hours is probably a good time for my subscribers and yours. Viewers, friends, should I say? I hate the term subscribers, but mate, it's been amazing. It really has. It's just good to meet someone who's not a coward. Can I just say it like that? No.
Oh, I agree.
You're not, I'm not, and there's a lot of people out there that are not. There's a lot of veterans that if only they could be exposed to the truth.
Yeah.
That would be putting their, I don't want to say their skills. It sounds like that bloody movie. I'm going to come, Liam Neeson, isn't it? I've got a special set of skills, but I don't mean that. What I mean is, there'd be a congruity, there'd be a movement there in a positive direction rather than just blatantly, blindly, whatever the word is, just pledging allegiance to the Queen. Because that's what we did when we were 18 years old. It could be actually, no, step up to the plate, guys. Come on. Our country is being rotted from the inside out.
Yeah.
There's an evil play. I don't want to say game, it's too soft a word, but there's an evil plot in play, and we need to stop bloody accepting it.
I agree.
We need to stop. I'm going to go back to it again. This is coming true as we speak, and it's not going to be a bad thing if the world has a few more heroes. Come on, come on. So Graham, stay on the line. so I can say a proper goodbye. But thank you so much for coming on. Let's maybe make this the first of several chats, or we'll do a live show together and we'll take people's questions, or at least you can, because you certainly know more about the English Constitution than I ever did. I wasn't even aware of it, to be honest, until like 2 days ago. Thank you again to our subscriber who put us in contact. Sorry, I can't remember your name. I just, like Graham, I get hundreds of messages a day. But to people at home, as I said, we're all about love on this channel. Love, respect, community. You know, we're not about hatred. We're not about racism. We're not about anti this or you know, I think I said it several times. I've been in Israel twice. I met some lovely, wonderful, wonderful people. I'm not commenting on the political situation there, which is not very nice for, you know, one side of the fence. But guys, we're not about spreading hatred. We're trying to do the opposite here. So please try and work with us. I'm going to shut up. Please like and subscribe if you can. Massive love to you all. See you on the Bought the T-Shirt podcast next time. Ciao. Hello friend. I hope this finds you well. My name's Chris THRALL. I'm a former Royal Marines Commando, and I fought my way back from chronic trauma and addiction to live, work and travel in 80 countries across all 7 continents, achieving all of my dreams and goals along the way. Now I pass my simple system on to other people, but I can only help you if you like and subscribe. So please do so, because you get one life, and if you live it right, one is enough.